Hello again, everyone. This time around, I'd like to speak a little bit about form. As you can see, it's the last of the 6 basic elements that I've been speaking about during these morning classes. I have chosen form to be last because it's the most difficult to hear when you listen to music. I've already spoken about some elements coming very readily to your ears: melody, rhythm, instrumentation. The others, texture, form, and harmony, are a little bit more difficult to hear. Now that you've had some experience listening to music, hopefully it won't be too difficult for you to pick up on. So I want to just spend a few minutes with the terms from today's lesson. Theme and variations. This is a very simple, direct form, and actually both pieces that I want you to listen to and write about for me today are in this genre, this type of form. Where a simple theme is played, and then there are variations that follow. I'll come back to that. A canon is a very simple form as well. It is where you can see a melody is just imitated all throughout. Row, row, row your boat, Frere Jacques. That's a good example of a canon, something that's sung in a round. A rondo is, you can see, uses this scheme of repetition. Remember that form is a pattern of repetition and contrast, generally speaking. In almost all forms of music, form comes from repetition and alteration of melody. And remember that jazz is the exception because the melody is improvised after a composed melody at the beginning and the end, the head. In between, the form of jazz tunes comes from repetition of the chord progression. We've spent some time with that. Going on, a strophic form. This is mentioned in the text a while back. This is basically the form that most popular music is composed in, and it's comprised of verses and choruses. They're defined here. Verse is basically changing lyrics with the same music. The chorus is the same lyrics repeated over and over with the same music. Most popular music follows this verse-chorus form, this strophic form. And usually it is A, B, A. In the case of popular songs, particularly country songs, verse, verse, chorus, verse, then they'll repeat the chorus and the verse and fade out. That's virtually every country song. The form is very, very consistent in that genre. But many, many popular songs use the AABA form. That's because the way that our brains work, we like to have some sense of organization. That's where the repetition comes from, but we always want to have new information as well. That's where the variety comes from. So A, we're reassured. B, we hear something different, and then we come back again. That's why that form is so common. Bridge is a little bit different piece of music that is common in song form as well. Form, like all of the other elements, has its exceptions. Some music is through composed, which means there is no repetition. New ideas just keep coming and coming and coming. That's what happens melodically in jazz. A couple of other terms relating not necessarily to form, but terms that you should know. Dynamics is the general term relating to all levels of volume, loudness in music. So you could say the dynamics of the rock band were so loud that it hurt my ears. The dynamics of the acoustic guitar were so soft that I had to lean forward to hear it well, something like that. Crescendo and decrescendo, getting louder, getting softer. You'll remember Beethoven used that to great effect in his Sixth Symphony that you heard a little bit of. Diminuendo is another term that relates to getting softer gradually as you go along. This became a very important element in music in the early 19th century after the piano had succeeded the harpsichord as the dominant keyboard instrument, because the piano can change volume, whereas the harpsichord cannot. Intonation is a good thing to know, just whether groups of musicians are playing in tune with one another, or whether an individual musician is playing relatively in tune with whatever he or she is doing. Virtuosity, very important. You'll be getting exposed to quite a bit of that starting with this class. You've actually heard some before as well, but the ability to perform with great technical skill and expressiveness. Those are the two components of virtuosity: technical skill and being able to play in a moving, expressive way. The first piece that you will listen to and write about is composed by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, a very famous composer from the classical era. You'll be reading about him in about 3 weeks or so. You can see that he died at a young age, but he was a wunderkind, a child virtuoso, composed a huge amount of music during his short life. He died at the age of 35. This piece of music is for solo piano, and it is a theme and variations. I think it'll be very easy for you to hear how he takes his original very simple theme that's played at the beginning and expands it to show off the virtuosity of the player as it goes along. The other piece is also a theme and variations. This comes from a ballet score written by Aaron Copland, a very famous American composer, lived through almost the entirety of the 20th century. You'll read about him in that chapter in the text at the end of the term. He takes a very simple tune, a Shaker hymn tune, and he uses various devices to create 5 variations. These variations would be a little bit more involved than listening to the Mozart because he doesn't use the entire melody in each of the variations. Sometimes he just uses parts of it, but he's got a lot more tools at his disposal because he's got an orchestra. So the instrumentation and things that he can do with texture and that sort of thing are much more varied than what Mozart has at his disposal with just the keyboard. But both of them are really nice, beautifully played, easy to listen to pieces of music. So there's the assignment, and T7 goes with it. That's what these pieces will be done in. Also, text chapter 7 deals with ethnic folk music of the Western Hemisphere. So you've already seen some video and done some reading about American folk music. This chapter will include some types of American folk music that may not have been covered in chapter 3. It also will deal with some Caribbean, South American music as well. Lots of really interesting sounding music. These ethnic musics are coming more and more into music that we hear in our culture just because of the really ready access we have to information. So, and the deadlines for the work are there. They're the same as always. So enjoy this music, and I will be speaking to you again very soon.